Are there any strategies that you can implement to influence or manipulate your fat burning? Yes, there is such a thing as the optimum intensity for fat burning. Going harder in your session doesn't directly translate to more fat burn. The opposite is true as well. Going low intensity only never translates to more absolute fat burn, because you are just burning calories so slowly that even though the percentage of the calories burned is leaning more toward fat, the amount of calories burned remains very low because your intensity is low. So this is a problem. Going harder is not the answer, and going low intensity is again not the answer then, or is it? Yes, there is such a thing as the optimal intensity to burn fat faster, and it has been researched like for a few decades. Maximum fat oxidation describes the maximal amount of fat you're able to burn in a minute, and FatMax describes the intensity at which this occurs. Let's take a look at a simple guidance at which intensity this happens for a different level of fitness. For sedentary and or obese individuals, basically anyone who is not very fit or is very low fitness, this will occur at 50 to 60% of their maximum heart rate. What does this mean? Well, this basically means that any low-level physical activity, even like walking or walking a little bit faster, can already be enough to raise your heart rate to a level when you are achieving your fat max, basically your maximal fat oxidation. So you will think, okay, this is great. All I need to do is walk. Oh, it will achieve maximal fat burn for your fitness level. But since that level is very low, you are only able to burn fat at a very low rate. And as soon as you go faster than walking, let's say you try to jog, like for a 5-minute jog and you're already out of breath, you need to stop, and rest. Well, guess what? Your fat burn went to zero. So as soon as you go above your comfort zone, like true comfort zone of walking, you're already decreasing the rate of fat burn. This is bad news, because walking already by itself does not burn a lot of calories and therefore will never burn a lot of fat. So let's say you raise your fitness level. Okay, go to the opposite of the scale. What about those who are very fit? Well, they can achieve maximal fat burn at a lot higher level, at 75 to 80% of their maximum heart rate. And this is not a walking pace, This is already a solid effort. They are not able to have a comfortable conversation at that level, but they can talk, with some difficulty. Still, this is something of an intensity which they can hold like for 1 to 2 hours, without much problem if they are very fit. And they are burning calories at a lot higher rate compared to the guy who is only walking. So this is why fitness really matters, The fitter you are, the harder you can work and still burn fat compared to those who are not fit. Ideally, you would want to have it like all I burn as energy is just fat, right? And then this would translate, the harder I work, the more fat I burn. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that, We are always burning fat among other energy sources, but for majority, fat is the most the source you want to tap in the most, because you basically have it in abundance. Even if you don't have a lot of fat, like an athlete, you still have it way more in energy compared to glycogen stores, for example. Here is an interesting fact. Females have an edge compared to males when it comes to fat max. On average, females go like 10 to 15% higher in intensity, and they can still burn fat compared to males. But males have the edge when it comes to muscle size, and because they have more muscle, they are able to burn calories at a faster rate compared to females. So even though females are more efficient on average compared to males when it comes to burning fat, males still have the edge when it comes to the amount of fat being burned, because more muscle allows them to burn calories at a higher rate. So what does this mean? Well, this means basically that you want to be as fit as you can be so that you can go higher in intensity and still burn fat, and you want to have more muscle if possible to burn calories at a higher rate so that this again would translate in more fat burned. I believe that our daily routines shape our lives, and I'll just show you an example how I start my day. This works best if you train early in the morning and you don't have a high intensity involved. Let's take a look of an interesting figure and other factors which influence the rate of our fat burning. So if you look at that figure, baseline describes starting a session with last meal being 2 to 3 hours before that session. Then the line above that describes morning session, basically a fasted state session, or starting your session with low levels of glycogen. This can boost your fat burn up to 20%. Then on top of all that, if you were to use some supplement or stimulant ingestion 20 to 30 minutes before that session, that fasted state session, that could additionally gain a 20% boost in fat burn. And that last line all the way to the top, is additional boost of 20 to 60%, which you can earn by 3 weeks of low carb, high fat diet or some similar type of diet, Still, note that your maximal strength, your recovery, your overall performance, if high intensity is something which is involved in your sessions or in your sport, may suffer, So achieving the maximum amount of fat burning does not correlate to maximum performance. I mean, it just depends on your sport and your goals. You can also make things worse by having a carbohydrate-rich snack or drink up to 30 minutes before a session and earn a decrease of 30% or more from that lowest baseline. So, I mean, that's something to be mindful of. You may not be trying to do everything perfect, but you for sure do not want to do the worst thing possible before a session and just load up on sugar. There are also some cheap supplements that seem to work great and are backed by research. Green tea extract plus 70%. Then we have New Zealand black currant plus 27% boost. Caffeine and omega-3 fatty acids, somewhere between 10 to 30% boost. All of these are really cheap, easy to find, and generally accepted as safe. Now, without the research support, without safety recommendations, without something known to be good for longevity or taken on a regular basis, there is a ton of such products, and I'm just not gonna cover those because I'm not interested in those. But there are some great channels out here on YouTube which cover those areas. What about some other nutritional and training strategies? Is there something I can do, like session-wise or nutrition-wise, which can boost my rate of fat oxidation? One of the main differences between a sedentary person or a non-fit person compared to an athlete or someone who is very fit is obviously their level of fitness. And this makes a major difference when it comes to maximal fat oxidation. What you do want, you want to have a high level of fitness. Is there a chance that you can achieve a high level of fitness? Well, maybe not as high as compared to someone who is training daily, but you can raise it like to a very high level compared to someone who is not training at all. So if you are gonna train only 2 to 3 times per week, high intensity and short sessions are your friend. Remember, I said that going high intensity is not really gonna increase your fat burn during the session, because the higher you go in intensity, the lower your fat burn. That's true, but what you want to increase is the level of your fitness, and high intensity sessions are those who will increase the level of your fitness in the shortest amount of time. So if you were only to train 2 to 3 times per week and for just 20 to 30 minutes, or even shorter if those sessions will be really high intensity, you will increase your fitness level very fast and raise it to a higher level than anyone who will only commit to low intensity. And even though someone can train like 2, 3, 4 hours per week, low intensity only, will never achieve the level of fitness as you can if you go for a short, high intensity session. Just to give you the idea how much you can boost your fat burning if you raise the level of your fitness. Let's say you're a sedentary person and your VO2 max, which is a measure of your potential when it comes to conditioning and your fitness level, is low, like in the 30s, like VO2 max is 30. Okay, and let's say you commit to raising your fitness level and you increase it to 60, which is double. And let's assume that your weight didn't change and the amount of your muscle that you have didn't change. So all it changed is, miraculously, is your fitness level, What would this mean in terms of how much fat you can burn per session? Well, doubling the amount of VO2 max would actually increase the amount of fat burn by 300 to 700% per session. You didn't hear this wrong. So if you were same person, same weight, same amount of fat, same amount of muscle, same composition, but you managed to raise your fitness level from 30 to 60, the amount of fat you are able to burn during the session will increase by 300 to 700%. Let that sink. Now, what would also change if you were to commit to raising your VO2 max? Obviously, you would probably lose some weight while doing so. And if you were using some weight in addition to conditioning training, you maybe would also increase your muscle size, and just improving your overall body composition would again boost your ability to burn fat faster. So it may go beyond 3 to 700% per session. Let that sink as well. There are some other strategies that you can apply. Like I said, if you train every day, obviously you'll burn more calories anyhow. But let's say you go even beyond that. You want to train 2 times per day, and in a way that this will boost your fat burning. How would you do it? Well, I would start the day exactly as I showed you, with that same routine, because basically this is what I do. And my morning session would last 30 to 40 minutes, would be that high intensity part, where I would go for either big weights, high intensity, or a mix of both. Then the remainder, like 30 to 40 minutes beyond that, I'll just drop off the intensity and go for something moderate, or I would be forced to do so anyhow, because in the morning you just cannot expect to be at full strength and full potential if you only eat as little as I showed you that I do in my morning routine, you know. Then after my session, I would go for protein-rich meal. I wouldn't like fill up with carbs because I would just want to have my glycogen stores relatively low or quite low throughout the day, so that when I go to my second session of the day late in the evening, I can start already with high levels of fatty acids in my bloodstream to burn as fuel. So that second session would be low intensity, and it could be something between 40, 60 or even up to 90 minutes on low intensity. It has to be low intensity, you know, you shouldn't struggle there. And after that session, I would fill up my body with a bit more carbs, you know. This would be just my decision because I just don't want to go all low carb, you know. So I would go for something moderate carb each meal, and I always have a lot of proteins in every meal anyway. So I would go moderate carbs so that I can replenish my my muscle glycogen to a degree that I can boost my recovery a bit, you know, and not worsen it too much, you know, because 2 sessions a day you have to eat something more than just low carb, you know, at least in my opinion, especially if you're gonna train in the morning again. But let's say you just wanna train 2 times per day and skip the next day, not training, just recovery. Then I could opt to go for low carb meal after my second session of the day and just do some carb loading, like moderate carb loading the next day because I'm not training. Do you remember those rules back in the day? Actually, some still use it, like eating past 5 or 6 p.m., you know, it's just not gonna help you lose weight. And then those people who abide to that would think, well, if I stop eating at 2 or 3, it's even better. There is something to it, but it's not about not eating. It's what you eat past a certain time. So the closer you get to your sleeping time, the lower should the carb intake be if you want to boost your fat oxidation, you know. So in this sense, you know, your last meal would ideally be with very little carbs. What you want is to slowly reduce the carb intake so that your glycogen stores will be lowered somewhat, you know, and your fat burning ability will be raised. So we are talking about things which can improve your fat oxidation, fat burning at any time, you know. But there are certain things that you can do to basically sabotage your ability to burn fat. One of those would be like eating a carb-rich meal before you're going to bed. You want the opposite to be true. Then there is this strategy that you start your session with well replenished glycogen stores, like you're full of energy, and then go for high intensity all out hardcore session. But after that session you go for low carb, not zero carb, but very low carb meal, you know. And what would this would do? This would impair your recovery, but it would boost, you know, your fat burning, and it may boost it for many hours, you know, especially if you were to train later in the day. That session, it's called train high, sleep low. So you train or high levels of energy, and then when you sleep you have low levels of energy, which can boost the fat burning like 20 to 30%. And since you are sleeping for many hours, this is not negligible, you know. And it's just imagine, you know, you'll sleep like 7 to 8 hours, and your last meal was maybe an hour or 2 hours before that, you know. So we are already at 8 to 9 hours without food. And when you wake up, if you're not gonna eat immediately, or especially if you're like those who are fasting in the morning, you know, so it will be like half a day or 10 hours at least without food. And in all that time you have boosted your ability to burn fat because of that last late session, high intensity session, hardcore session, full of energy, so your session was great, but only you didn't like pay the bill fully, you know, you just had it like a low carb, protein rich meal afterwards, which boosted your fat burning but impaired your recovery. And obviously, if you were to train the next day in the morning, you wouldn't feel very Olympic, you know. So you have to keep those things in mind, you know. It's what improves one thing to the max impairs something else. So it's always about the balance. And you don't want to just burn fat, or just burn calories, because then you'll just get weak and you will not get strong. And having strength, again, boosts your ability to burn fat. So you have to defend your gains. So it's about the balance, you know. You want to like improve your ability to burn fat, but you don't want to sacrifice all the strength and muscle gains that you achieved like in previous months, you know, or just before that, you know. There is also an interesting hack that I learned like already 10, if not more years back, you know. While you're in fasted state, like in the morning, and you can improve your energy levels to a degree if you ingest some fructose during your session. So I would like look up the fruit where the glycemic index is low and it's fructose based mainly. And then you can ingest this during a session, and even though those are counted as carbs, it will not impair your ability to burn fat. If you were to go the opposite way and ingest like sugary, glucose-rich fruit, or just something like sugary, you know, that would impair your fat burn. But it's not true for fructose. And the guy who figured this out was Tim Noakes, who then years later, after he figured this out, went to keto guy. You know, he's like a keto guru today. So similarly to fructose during a session, like in fasted state or in a state where you want to maximize your fat burn, you can ingest amino acids, BCAA, you know. They will improve your energy levels a little bit during a session. They will serve you similar as if you would eat some sugary carbs, but they will not raise your blood sugar in a way to impair your fat burning ability, you know. So here we have two hacks now. So it's amino acids, BCAA, and some fructose. So just imagine, you know, you can combine all those tips that I gave you in your own way. So I start in the morning, fasted state, by my description, what fasted state means for me. And then I go into high intensity. And like after 20 to 30 minutes, I can ingest some BCAA and some fructose so that my performance does not drop as sharply as it would otherwise. I want to end today's video with mentioning two main weapons for fat burning. If we combine everything I have talked about so far, you know, everything which can improve or affect your ability to burn fat more to a higher degree and all that, we add all of this together, 50% of that result will be directly related to the amount of fat-free mass your body holds. So this does matter a lot, 50%. So no matter what you do, 50% of that is directly impacted by fat-free mass you have. And majority of that fat-free mass will be your muscles. So you do want to have a certain muscle size, you know. I'm not saying you need to become a muscle monster and just go all out, more mass is better. No, it's just about the balance, you know. You don't want to be like really skinny, you don't need to be like huge, but you want to have a certain amount of muscle so that you have the ability to be both strong, to be fit, and also to burn fat at a higher rate. What about the other 50%? Well, the other 50% is related to your conditioning level. So half of your results are directly related to your fat-free mass, and half of your results are related to your conditioning level. And this basically brings us to which is better. You know that eternal question, like what's better? Weights, being strong, lifting heavy, building size, you know, or cardio? You basically have those people, one in one camp, one in other, you know, both arguing which is better to, you know, as a method to burn fat. And if you think about it, if 50% is in the camp of weight and strength training, and the other 50% is conditioning, so obviously if you add both of them, you have the best chance,